Our next one is near and dear to my heart from a senior manager at Developer Advocacy. Damn, I can't even pronounce that all. So basically a dev avocado type guy, but he's senior at it. James Beswick from AWS. James, thank you so much.
Hi, how you doing? I'm still recovering from the magic trick.
How did you like that?
That was good. It was really good.
That was amazing. And I think the reason that they have me on this is just for the entertainment purposes of just being so wowed at all of it. Every single time he does them, he's like, "Did you do this before?" I'm like, "No, but I don't remember, so do it again." You know, I can just do a deck of cards. That's about it. All right, everybody, real quick, I just want to make sure that I love the conversations and the comments that are happening in there. If you have any questions for James, feel free to drop them. James, let's talk about it. Our topic today, what's new in serverless, and what's new in serverless from reInvent. How about you give yourself a little bit of an introduction and let's talk about it.
Yeah, sure. So for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a developer advocate in the AWS Serverless team, and I run the team of DAs that we have here. And we've just come off of reInvent. So we had a whole week in Vegas, and it was a really big week for serverless. Lots of different things coming across with different services like Lambda, step functions, EventBridge, and so forth. And so our team was very busy this week because also we had pre-invent, which was a bunch of releases that happened just before. And so I was trying to boil down all the things for you, John, that I think are interesting because there are just so many different items. And I think the biggest ones for your audience would be SnapStart for Lambda, pipes for EventBridge, and distributed map for step functions.
Okay. My top pick of that is going to be the SnapStart. I have some questions for you of my own that I found very interesting. But how about you explain to everybody what the Lambda SnapStart is and the value behind it and some of the cost savings efforts that went into this? Because I know from the release that happened, this was a long time coming, but took a lot of work to achieve.
Yeah, so I'll roll back a little bit and talk about cold starts, because when you think about Lambda functions, this is ephemeral compute. So you have your function, it comes to life on demand at exactly the point when you need it. And so the Lambda service, when it runs your code, has to basically prepare the environment, fetch your code, and then run that. And when it does that for the first time, there's a period of time called a cold start where it's getting this ready. In subsequent invocations where the code's already available, that doesn't happen. That's called a warm start. And so cold starts happen at about 1% of production invocations, a little bit less actually. But obviously, when you want to have very consistent invocation patterns, these cold starts for some customers are something they want to reduce. And so it's something we've been working on for years and years and years. And we think about all the time in the Lambda service. And so SnapStart was a really, really big attempt to address some of this. Now, this is a Java only solution right now because Java cold starts tend to be the most significant just because of the weight of many frameworks and the way that the runtime works. But what we're seeing from some of our biggest customers are cold starts on Java that drop from 10 seconds sometimes down to well under 1 second. And this is free to implement. In many cases, it needs no code change. So it's my favorite type of feature. You just switch it on and you get the optimization benefit.
Okay, let's talk about the process. And I went in and I read a lot of the stuff around it because I know utilizing like a Lambda function kind of going in for it is that anytime it's invoked, it has to go, it traditionally would have to go through the cold start, it would deploy, it would get it up, it would run your code, it would pull down all binaries. And you said about like 10 seconds going into it. Now you've gotten this down where it's utilizing what's called Firecracker micro VM, correct?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, now here's my question, right? So when I click this, does AWS automatically go in and kick it off and then do the snapshot, and now I have it ready and available to invoke anytime, numerous times?
So what happens is at the point where you create or you update your Java-based function, in the background, the Lambda service runs everything in your code except the handler. We call this the init code. And so this is the code typically where you're forming database connections or you're fetching large libraries. You're doing other sort of preparation work that takes time. And once that code is then run, it then saves and serializes the state of the Lambda function back to an internal repository in S3. And so next time then you are actually invoking the function for the first time, it'll use that snapshotted version where the init is already run. Now, the init snapshot is kept for up to 14 days. So if you don't have a function that runs for a long time, you'll lose the init snapshot. But for most customers where they're using these functions all the time, this is a really convenient way to then reuse that environment where then you don't go through that init phase again.
Okay, so I didn't know it was available for 14 days. It's actually pretty good because then it refreshes it. Or anytime you update your code, I'm assuming that it refreshes the snapshot,
Right.
correct?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
so James, here's my question: how does this handle it at scale? Because and this might not be my knowledge or whatever it is, but when the Lambda function's invoked, it's doing it asynchronous, right? You could do multiple ones of it throughout the environment. Yeah, am I having multiple snapshots actually available in the throughput, or is it all coming back to one snapshot? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's actually a single snapshot, but it's the same mechanism that's used for when it starts your code in any case. So effectively, it's fetching this snapshot from S3 internally. And so when you look at the scaling of this, it's pretty extraordinary. We've got customers who are running Lambda with concurrency of hundreds of thousands who can use this type of scaling for snapshots. So we handle all that for you. It's one of the reasons why this has taken a fairly long time coming, because the engineering behind this is pretty substantial. But it really has such an enormous impact on your latency when you're getting these functions running.
Well, congratulations to the team that put this together and did it. Congratulations to your team for writing up everything and kind of presenting all of it. I know this was a long time coming, and I can just imagine when you're running Lambda at scale in the thousands, that this is the value of it is not only saving you time, right, of execution, the money, and you'll be able to do your events and actions at scalable and quicker.
Yeah, I mean, this is something where this is near and dear to my heart, because basically we're constantly trying to find ways to make this more seamless for customers. We know the future of compute is this type of ephemeral compute where you simply provide code and we run it for you. But obviously, when you've got issues like cold starts, this is a barrier to some workloads. And so anytime we can reduce that in a way that's painless, we have to do as little as possible to gain the benefit. I'm a huge fan of that approach. So it's really exciting to see this come to fruition. It's something I've been watching for the last couple of years with the team put together. And the sorts of results we're seeing from it are just really encouraging. And obviously, this is just the first step. We'll keep doing this with other runtimes and keep making improvements. But down the road, you can see a future where cold starts become really something that's not something that we talk about much at all with Lambda.
All right, so everybody that's listening along for us, I actually have a question for you. And James, you can't answer it because as a senior DA for AWS, I don't want you spoiling it. Does anybody know when Lambda was officially released? Comment, drop it in there, and then we'll have it. Oh, man, I can see that starting to light up. Okay, that was actually probably a really good question. James, I know you mentioned two other services, and I want to be cognizant of our time. Before I get to maybe some of the others that were released, did you have a favorite that was released? And if it was SnapStart, we can start with the next.
SnapStart's my favorite just because I've watched it come to it'd be born over a long period of time. I've seen the effort that went into it. So that's sort of the one that is my favorite. But actually, EventBridge Pipes is one I'm really interested in because it's something that's very, very simple. And under the covers, obviously, there's a lot of complexity, but it goes back to the old idea of having like Unix-style pipes. And we talk a lot internally about how we can make these integrations from different services much easier. So when you've got Kinesis streams or SQS queues or other services, how can you attach these in a way where you take all the burden away from customers and make it as simple as possible? And so Pipes really does this. It's actually very simple to use. You have a source, you have a transform, and you have a destination, much like a Unix pipe concept. And it means you can take out a lot of Lambda functions that otherwise would be doing the joining, and it makes it that much easier. So I really like this feature. It's a new feature of EventBridge. It's very simple to use, but it can be very powerful if you're dealing with lots of messages at scale.
James, I'm going to switch just a little bit because I like the event pipes, but I want to switch just and ask you the question around AWS reInvent and something we talked about when we originally kicked it off. Typically, AWS releases a lot of services and features around reInvent time. it seemed to me in a positive fashion that AWS was more prescriptive in the releases of integrating existing or fine tuning existing services like the Lambda SnapStart or the Event Bridge, which was released, I think, 2019. It was talked about 2020 or kicked in or 2021, right around there. Is that the same feeling that you got that, they're really kind of being making sure that all their services work well together and integrate or fine tuning them?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to just the way we build things here. So a lot of customers don't realize that about 90% of our roadmaps come from customer requests, things that people ask us for. And so we're literally building what people are asking us for. And I think a lot of this reflects the fact that many customers want more integrations across services. And so we're building a lot of these things. And, I think you'll start to see this more and more, in the next couple of years, that especially in the serverless space, as customers are plugging together all these different services and then wanting more ease and less burden in the way that works, we'll start to develop more features down that road. But largely speaking, it all really comes down to what you ask us for. So if you find there are gaps or things you'd like to see, let people like me or your account managers know, and then we can let the product teams know and make sure it's the sort of thing that they're building.
James, I think that in most people, if you're not aware of it, AWS is their number one principle, customer obsession, and they listen to their customers and their feedback. Now, while you might have felt that re:Invent didn't have the significant of releases, it was all due to customer-driven requests of integrating existing customers and features and releases. So, James, I appreciate your insights not only on that and SnapStart, obviously, the Event Bridge. But the third thing that you mentioned was the release of, what was it, the integration of step functions?
Oh, a distributed map.
That's what it was.
Mm.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so step functions has really been innovating a lot in the last couple of years. And if you've not seen it in a while, it's worth looking at it again. But you saw this discussion around EDA and around workflows through Werner's presentation and his keynote. And this is something that Step Functions has been running with for a while. So, if you look at the continuation of where they've been for the last couple of years, they had Workflow Studio and they had service integrations that allow you to do things directly from transitions without needing code. And they've been looking at how they can make the service more useful for more complex solutions. So distributed map allows you to build parallel processing use cases for tens of thousands of files in S3 and build extraordinarily large workflows over that. But it also builds on some things that were released in pre-invent in intrinsic functions, which again let you do things in transitions without using Fargate or Lambda or other compute solutions. And so this is part of an overall story with step functions where it becomes one tool that can kind of do everything for you, often at a much lower cost and lower latency than building the compute equivalent. So distributed map, I think at this stage, it's very useful for anyone who's looking at parallel compute workloads. But over time, you'll start to see it more useful for just any type of distributed state for different messages coming from different services. It's a really exciting launch.
I like that. Let's drop if somebody has a link to that one, Jess, or something, we can drop a couple of links to the three things that we talked about in the chat. We'll share everybody out of the conversation. So, James, let's talk about serverless and some of the things around, what are customers doing and building with serverless technology? Has it changed the way that they're doing it?
Yeah, I think serverless really went mainstream in the last couple of years. And certainly from our position where we can see what customers are building, it's really a question of what aren't they building with serverless. And many companies are taking this serverless first approach and seeing where they can start with Lambda and Fargate to solve their problems. And so, I've always been realistic that, one tool isn't designed for absolutely everything. But I like to see the fact with serverless that it can be used for many of the harder and more annoying problems as a developer. So when you're trying to do things at scale, or you're trying to handle, large processing solutions or interactive workloads, these are all sorts of things that can be done very easily with serverless. And so, many large companies are now approaching this way. I think last year, Amazon themselves, the retail side, said that 49% of all of their workloads are now serverless. And so now that it's really gone mainstream, now we're looking forward to the next wave of this, where we start to look at, well, what tools do you want? What are the gaps that we currently have? And how do we continually make it better for everybody?
What tools do you want or how you can make it better?
Yeah.
And what do you think will change in the next year with regards to the serverless landscape?
I think there are a couple of things you'll see from us. In Werner's keynote, he talked about event-driven architecture extensively. And again, this is a topic that I'm very interested in personally as a developer because you see the power of asynchronous patterns and events in these very large distributed systems. How it can simplify development and make them more robust. And I think you'll see a lot more customers getting involved with that, a lot more tooling, a lot more solutions around the EDA space generally. And I think also on the other side of that, you're going to see a simplification of the design. So we talked a little bit about Application Composer earlier, where you can drag and snap solutions in the console to build out SAM templates. And what we've shown so far is really just the very, very beginning. I've seen what this team's roadmap looks like, and it's honestly just really awe-inspiring to see where they're going. But this massive simplification will really open up the power of serverless design to many, many more developers. So that's another part I'm very excited about. When you put these two things together, I think it means that really developers can build almost any type of solution at scale within the next year or two. That's going to really empower a lot of people.
Talking about building things at scale or getting your hands into things, how about you talk to us about serverless land?
Mm.
Specifically serverlessland.com. There's a YouTube channel. There's a lot of information on it that you guys have put together.
Yeah, so my team started Serverless Land about 2 years ago, and it started just as a way to aggregate blog posts and videos and other things in the serverless space that we found interesting. And it then developed into other use cases where we brought in serverless patterns for SAM, serverless framework, Terraform, and other IAC tools, also workflow examples, and many other coding solutions. And it's one of those things where every time somebody has asked us for a different idea, we've built it into this platform. And it's become this massively popular way to start as you build this serverless journey. Some of it came out of just the need as we were building. We wanted to find a quick way of finding quick solutions to build things. And, we couldn't remember how to connect SNS to Lambda or find the right frameworks. We put it all in one place. And it's just exciting to see how it's grown. The YouTube side of it is really where we put all of our videos. So we have all of the reInvent videos and all of the serverless office hours, our weekly show, and all the other materials like Marcia's videos as well. But really, it's driven by you. So if you're a serverless developer and you'd like to see more content in serverless land, either through YouTube or the website, just let us know. We're constantly developing and refining it.
I got a quick question. First of all, great job on the serverless land. And before I bring Richard Semon back on to actually give some of his insights and a little bit of information around it, maybe ask you some more questions. There was a question that came into the chat, and I'm going to try to pull it and kind of word it in a way that I can ask you. That is, DynamoDB, is it serverless, or is it going to be more serverless for reInvent?
I would consider Dynamo
specific
serverless.
of it, but I'm sure you can answer it.
Yeah, I mean, I would consider DynamoDB serverless because it's fundamentally there's no instances to manage. It's a managed service that is compatible with the other serverless services like Lambda in a very easy to integrate way. Scale to zeros, I know people say is not a factor in DynamoDB, but I think broadly speaking, the definition of serverless has evolved beyond what it was a couple of years ago. But to me, DynamoDB is probably the most serverless of all the serverless databases we have out there. And it's one I use with a lot of my solutions.
Nice. I like that. Okay, so what I am going to do is I'm going to bring Richard on. I am going to take a quick little bit of a break myself since I'll be doing a lot of talking. And Richard is going to take the next 10 minutes with you, and I'll jump back on. So let me manage the controls. And Richard? James.
Hi, Richard.
Hey.
All
Hi, James.
right. So I'm going to give you guys the next 5-10 minutes to kind of take it away. I'm going to join back on, and then we're going to do some more magic. And guess what? The raffle is, by the way, it is Oculus. Sorry, I had to look at my list. We got 2 Oculus, 2 Keurigs, and so James, you're in time for a really good one that's going to happen. Richard, Great. It's all yours.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, John. Yeah, James, thank you for those great insights. I really appreciate it. I mean, certainly I picked up on a couple of things that you said in terms of sort of serverless, having sort of moved on certainly from sort of the early days, and it's kind of expanded quite a lot and certainly a lot of more capabilities and functions. Actually, the example I had was from the AWS Summit London earlier this year that I attended. It was a company called Kazoo, which is a car hire and sales company, and they were actually on. They came on the stage. I think their CTO came on stage, and he said that their entire business runs in serverless and in AWS Serverless, and their website, they actually had it up and running from literally zero to actually taking customer orders in less than 90 days. So that's certainly kind of the type of thing that you can achieve, with that, with that type of technology and those sorts of, services and capabilities. I also kind of picked up a little bit around some of the other sort of functions that AWS or some of the other services that AWS is kind of bringing out. These are not necessarily maybe focused in serverless, but maybe you can. I'm curious to kind of maybe if you can highlight whether serverless can work in these, and what would be the serverless's maybe sort of contribution in these. So there was a lot of in the announcements, a lot of stuff about sort of high performance, sort of things like DL inference applications, optimized high packet processing and EC2 instances and things like that. These are all more infrastructure stuff. But can sort of serverless? Can we see some of these where where we can kind of do these in a serverless way? Can kind of the serverless capabilities that AWS has be, to kind of expand and be able to take advantage of some of these other things as well? And how can we do that? Would that kind of be more a sort of an API approach for us to be able to kind of do that in serverless, and then be able to access all these other services in AWS, because they're great things, and I'm seeing kind of a lot of focus on things like HPC and high performance computing, big data and stuff like that from AWS. So I'd love to see kind of people doing that, but actually doing it in a serverless way. That would kind of be the ultimate function.
Yeah, if you go back to the sort of dawn of serverless with Lambda, we had this original idea that you wouldn't pay until it was used. You wouldn't manage any of the underlying instances. You wouldn't be managing the runtimes or the networking or how the service really works. You just basically provided your code and then it runs on demand.
Yeah.
And I think the definition back in those days was very simple, because the service was very simple, and the offering itself was fairly simple. And then over time, as we've added more service integrations, and you've seen it go beyond just S3, SNS, SQS, these sorts of things, to people wanting to work with all the other services, the definition has become more vague, because people still like the idea of having managed services. But can we be so rigid when we say, well, does it scale to zero, or is there always no instance involved? And it really depends on the service you're working with. So I think the spirit of serverless is always about reducing your overhead, reducing what you're prepared to manage as a team, just so you can work on the stuff that matters. And so I've always been less concerned about what exactly is service. A lot of customers ask me, with our SaaS partners serverless? And to some degree, from your perspective, there might be. You may just have an API where they scale up and down and you pay for what you use. And so that may well be the case. And obviously, as we've developed more services that have come online, like Redshift and OpenSearch that are serverless. Some of the the existing community have said, well, those involve instances. So how are they strictly serverless? But fundamentally, they involve a lot less management. And I think directionally, that's where we're thinking about where serverless goes. And on the computer side, there's also a continuation there, you see as well, where from Lambda, we've got services like Fargate and AppRunner as well, and this continuum going all the way across, down towards Kubernetes and EC2.
Yeah.
And so customers tend to use a blend of these, and I don't tend to have such a purist approach to it. So
sure.
I think the space has evolved and the definitions have evolved with it.
Okay, cool. And I touched on the application composer earlier. How can we, is that kind of would you say that's kind of an easy way for people to kind of get in and try a little bit, muck around sort of serverless and play with Lambda and things like that? Is that kind of a good way to start? What's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic way to start. So I worked very closely with the team that have built this over the last 18 months or so. And the difficulty is always, how do you help people start, but also how do you make a tool that's useful to people who understand a lot of these services? How do you make it integrate with both the console and with the IAC tools? And also, how do you build something that evolves with what people want? Because out of the gate, you don't always know exactly what it is that's going to work. And I think what they've produced in this first iteration is something that's very intuitive to use, very helpful as a way just to drag services together and see the sort of infrastructure as code that's generated in a way that you can then more intuitively then build your applications. And I'm just really excited about what lies in future as well for this product, because the team is actively seeking feedback from everybody using it from the first few weeks, and they've had thousands of suggestions so far. But I actually see this as being a primary way that applications in the serverless space are built, not just by beginners, by experienced practitioners, especially when you're only talking about ones where you've got a dozen things that you're putting together. I think these sorts of tools could be very useful.
Cool. Yeah, and I mean the other space, again, serverless without having to say it necessarily, it certainly lends itself towards that sort of cloud cost management, because you're sort of almost at the extreme edge of using computing only when you need it, and kind of structuring it in the way that will save you money in the cloud. So can we sort of think of that as a sort of a natural extension into not just cost saving, but also an organization's way of contributing towards sustainability and their kind of footprint as well? What's your take on that? Is that kind of, do you see a sort of a connection on those as well?
Your customers obviously are much more concerned about sustainability today than they ever have been. AWS has been very committed to sustainability for years, and obviously as energy costs increase, it's becoming much more of a factor in everybody's bottom line as well. Serverless as a concept, I think, can help in this regard fundamentally because of what you say, that you're using what you need on demand and paying for what you use. Not only means you're not just holding up resources that you're not using potentially, but also you're becoming more cognizant of the cost of the various parts you use and finding better ways to implement that, which invariably means you're improving your sustainability angle. So I think, again, this is one of those things I think is very early days in this space, but I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about sustainability in the future. And I think serverless has a very big role to play there.
Fabulous. Excellent. What do you see sort of, happening in 2023? What's kind of serverless looking like in 2023? What are you guys going to be most excited about in your team?
Well, as a team, we're excited about the momentum behind serverless generally, because we just see take off in every direction across every size of customer, across every industry, everywhere in the world. Even in regions like South America, especially, you see people just leapfrogging containers, going straight to serverless. So really, in every different way, people are embracing this, and we're looking forward to seeing what people build and how we can help them. Because as DAs, we work for the developers more than we work for the product teams, and so we're really interested to see where people find the sticking points are and what we can improve to make the products better. But it's exciting for me personally, because I've been involved with serverless for 6 or 7 years now, and I've always felt that directionally it's the right way to go, and it will be the predominant way we build things at some point. But obviously, when you're at the very edge of what's being developed, it takes time to get there. And so going past that tipping point and seeing this is becoming the mainstream now is really exciting. But internally, there's so much chatter in roadmaps around what people are building, what they're adding. And customers are all asking about how they can use serverless in their workloads in so many different ways. And it's part of this progression you've seen from going from on-prem to VMs to EC2s to Beanstalk to Kubernetes to serverless. It's just continuing and then speeding up. So although I'm not great at crystal ball gazing, I'm guessing that this direction will continue.
Yeah.
And it's just really exciting to be part of it.